The afternoon sun hung low over the abandoned construction site, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Mark hadn't intended to stop here. He was on his way home from work, his mind preoccupied with nothing more than dinner plans and the dull ache in his legs. But then he heard it, faint, desperate, almost swallowed by the wind. A whimper. He paused, scanning the overgrown lot littered with rusted pipes, broken cinder blocks, and patches of wild grass that had taken over where workers had long abandoned their task. Another whimper. This time, more distinct, more pleading. He stepped forward cautiously, his heartbeat quickening as he followed the sound. It led him to a large, corroded drain pipe, partially buried in the earth, its mouth gaping like a tunnel into darkness. Mark knelt down, peering inside. At first, his eyes struggled to adjust. The interior was damp, the air thick with the scent of wet metal and old decay. Then, just a few feet in, he saw her, a dog curled protectively around a cluster of tiny, trembling bodies. Puppies. His breath caught. The mother dog's eyes met his, wide and wary. She did not move, but there was something in her gaze, not just fear, but urgency. Her ribs were visible beneath her dirt-matted fur, her body tense as if every muscle was poised between trust and defense. Mark swallowed hard. He had always liked dogs but had never been particularly involved with rescues. He had no idea what to do. Could he even get close without scaring her? His fingers itched toward his phone. He could call animal control, but something in the dog's expression stopped him. This wasn't just a mother protecting her young. She was guarding something. He glanced past her, deeper into the pipe. At first, there was only darkness. Then his eyes picked up something unnatural, scratches along the inner walls, deep and erratic, as if something, or someone, had clawed desperately at the rusted metal. His skin prickled. He took out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam flickered, cutting through the gloom. Something pale and torn lay half-buried in the dirt just beyond the dog. He squinted. Fabric. A piece of clothing? It was stained, discolored, and too small to belong to an adult. The dog let out a low growl, not menacing but warning. Her body was trembling, her breath shallow. She wasn't just wary of him, she was afraid of whatever was behind her. Mark's gut twisted. His mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had someone been living in this pipe? A runaway? A child? The thought made his stomach churn. He needed to get closer, but he didn't dare push the dog. Then, without warning, the dog whimpered and nudged one of the puppies toward him. Mark froze. It was as if she was offering it to him. He hesitated, then slowly reached out, his fingers brushing the tiny creature's fur. The warmth of life pulsed against his palm. The puppy let out a tiny, sleepy sound, unaware of the tension between its mother and the human kneeling before her. Something wasn't right. If the dog were simply protecting her young, she wouldn't be acting like this. She was trying to tell him something, trying to get him to do something. The wind shifted, carrying a faint but unmistakable scent from deeper inside the tunnel. A smell that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Rot. His stomach lurched. There was something else in that pipe. Mark shot to his feet, his breath coming fast. He fumbled for his phone and dialed 911 before his rational mind could talk him out of it. "This is emergency services. What is your location?" He turned in a circle, scanning for a street sign, anything that would pinpoint where he was. "I'm near the old construction site off Route 6, behind the gas station." "What's the nature of your emergency?" Mark licked his lips, debating how much to say. "There's a dog. She just gave birth in a drain pipe, but I think there's something else in there. I don't know what, but it smells bad. And I found what looks like a piece of a child's clothing." Silence. Then the dispatcher's voice returned, sharper now. "Stay where you are. Officers are on the way." Mark swallowed hard and ended the call. His fingers were trembling. The dog whined, shifting anxiously. She could sense his fear. "It's okay, girl," he murmured, though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring her or himself. The wind rustled the overgrown grass. The setting sun cast everything in an eerie golden hue. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Mark's pulse pounded in his ears as he took one last look at the darkness inside the pipe. He had no idea what was buried in there, but he was certain of one thing. This wasn't just about a stray dog. Something else, something terrible, had happened here, and he had just stumbled straight into it. The wail of sirens grew louder, a distant echo against the vast, empty construction site. Mark stood near the pipe, shifting his weight anxiously. The mother dog remained where she was, her body a trembling shield over her puppies, her amber eyes flicking from Mark to the darkness behind her. Something was in there. Within minutes, a police cruiser skidded to a stop on the cracked pavement, followed by a second. Two uniformed officers stepped out, their hands resting near their holsters. The taller one, a broad-shouldered man with a neatly trimmed beard, took the lead. His name tag read Officer Hale. "You the one who called it in?" Hale asked, scanning the scene. Mark nodded. "Yeah. The dog, she gave birth in the pipe, but there's something else back there. I think it might be bad." The second officer, a younger man with sharp eyes and a cautious stance, named Officer Ramirez, exchanged a look with Hale. "What makes you say that?" Mark gestured toward the pipe. "I saw something, a piece of clothing, small, like it belonged to a kid. And there's this smell." He trailed off, throat tightening. Hale's expression darkened. "Stay back," he ordered, then motioned to Ramirez. The two officers approached the pipe cautiously, hands on their flashlights, guns still holstered but within reach. The moment they stepped closer, the mother dog growled low in her throat, her body tensing. "Easy, girl," Ramirez murmured. "We're not gonna hurt you." He flicked on his flashlight and directed the beam into the darkness. Mark saw his face tighten as he swept the light over the interior. "There's something back here," Ramirez muttered. Hale knelt down beside him, shining his own light into the abyss. The moment his beam landed on the object in question, he stiffened. "Jesus! What is it?" Mark asked, unable to stop himself. Hale exhaled sharply before pulling out his radio. "Dispatch, we need backup at the construction site off Route 6. Possible crime scene. Requesting detectives and a forensic team." Mark's stomach twisted. A crime scene. Ramirez turned to him, his expression unreadable. "You said you found the dog here, right? You didn't move anything." Mark shook his head. "I didn't touch a thing. She was already here when I got here." Hale stood up, jaw tight. Then this dog might have been guarding something a lot bigger than just her puppies. The tension in the air thickened. The wind carried the distant hum of approaching vehicles. Mark swallowed hard, staring at the pipe. He hadn't seen much, but whatever was inside had rattled both officers. Minutes later, another police car pulled up, followed by an unmarked sedan. A man in a dark suit stepped out, his sharp gaze sweeping over the scene. Detective Carl Bennett, his reputation preceded him. Known for his meticulous nature and an almost unsettling ability to put together puzzles others missed, he was the kind of investigator who left no stone unturned. Bennett approached, nodding to Hale. "Fill me in." Hale gestured toward the pipe. "Local found a stray dog in there, gave birth to puppies. But further back, we found something that looks like a child's torn shirt. There's also a smell like decay." Bennett's expression didn't change, but something in his posture sharpened. Without a word, he pulled on a pair of gloves and crouched by the pipe. The mother dog growled again, but he held up a hand, unmoved. "She's protecting something," he murmured. "She nudged a puppy toward me earlier," Mark added, his voice quieter now. "Like she was trying to tell me something." Bennett finally turned to him, his gaze locking onto Mark's like a vice. "And you just happened to find her?" Mark bristled slightly. "I heard whining while I was walking by. I wasn't looking for trouble." The detective studied him for a beat longer, then nodded before turning his attention back to the pipe. He pulled out his flashlight and leaned in closer. The moment his light landed on the object inside, he let out a slow breath. Carefully, Bennett reached inside with gloved hands and pulled out a tattered, dirt-stained piece of fabric, small, pink, patterned with faded flowers. A child's dress. And there was something on it. Something dark. Something dried. Blood. Mark's stomach turned. Oh God. Bennett lifted the dress, inspecting it under the flashlight. Then his eyes flickered back toward the darkness inside the pipe. His voice was calm but firm when he spoke. Get the cadaver dogs. The weight of his words hit like a hammer. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Mark's breath came shallow. He wasn't sure what he had expected to find when he stopped that afternoon, but it sure as hell wasn't this. The mother dog let out a soft whimper, her eyes darting between the humans, as if she understood exactly what was happening. And then, for the first time, she lifted her head and looked past them, toward something in the distance. Something none of them had noticed before. Something watching them. A rustling in the distance sent a shiver through the tense night air. The officers immediately turned toward the sound, hands drifting instinctively toward their holsters. The mother dog let out a low, guttural growl, her body still half-curled around her puppies, but her gaze locked onto something beyond the police vehicles. Detective Bennett straightened, his grip tightening on the blood-stained dress. His voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge of command in it. "Hale, Ramirez, check it out." Both officers nodded and moved cautiously toward the source of the noise. The surrounding area was mostly abandoned, with skeletal remains of half-finished buildings looming in the darkness, steel beams jutting out like ribs from the earth. Mark's pulse quickened. Whoever, or whatever, was out there had been watching them. "Hello?" Hale called out, his flashlight sweeping over the tall grass. "Come out where we can see you." Silence. Then, a sudden burst of movement, a blur of a figure darting between the rusted remains of a construction scaffold. "Stop!" Ramirez barked, breaking into a sprint. Hale followed close behind. Mark's throat tightened as he watched them give chase. The figure was fast, but Ramirez had the advantage of a shorter distance and momentum. Within seconds, he lunged forward, tackling the runner to the ground with a grunt. A scuffle ensued, kicking, scrambling limbs, until Hale moved in to assist, pinning the suspect down. Bennett and Mark rushed over. The moonlight cast just enough illumination to reveal the person they had caught was a child. A girl, no older than 10, covered in dirt and wearing clothes that hung loosely from her frail frame. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps as she struggled, her wild, terrified eyes darting between the officers. "Easy, kid," Hale murmured, his grip firm but not rough. "We're not gonna hurt you." She whimpered, squirming harder. "Let me go." Bennett crouched beside her, his expression unreadable. "We're not here to hurt you," he said in an even voice. "But we need to know why you were watching us." Her lips trembled, and for the first time, Mark noticed scratches along her arms. Bruises in various shades of healing. Dirt smudged across her face, but beneath the grime, he could see tear tracks glistening in the light. The child had been crying. Bennett softened his tone. "What's your name?" She hesitated, her tiny hands clenching into fists against the ground. Then, barely above a whisper, "Emily." Mark felt something tighten in his chest. "Emily," he echoed, kneeling beside Bennett. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but the way she flinched when Ramirez loosened his grip on her wrist told another story. Bennett studied her carefully. "Emily, do you know anything about what's inside that pipe?" A flicker of emotion crossed her face. She did know. And then, her eyes darted toward the mother dog, still nestled around her puppies, watching the interaction with wary interest. Emily swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "She saved me." The words sent a chill through Mark's spine. Bennett remained calm, though his jaw tightened slightly. "Saved you from what?" Emily hesitated. Then, her gaze flicked toward the pipe, the very place where the dog had been protecting something other than her puppies. Mark's stomach twisted. She took a deep breath. From the bad man. Silence fell over the group like a thick blanket. The officers exchanged glances, their faces grim. Bennett exhaled slowly. Emily, is there someone we should be looking for? Her eyes filled with fresh tears, and she nodded. He's still out there. A shiver ran through Mark's body. Bennett stood abruptly, turning to Hale and Ramirez. We need to secure the area. If there's someone dangerous still around, we're not alone. Hale nodded and immediately spoke into his radio, requesting additional backup. Ramirez, however, stayed focused on Emily. Kid, where's your family? Do you have parents looking for you? Her shoulders hunched. No. Mark felt the full weight of that one word settle over them. Bennett crouched again, his voice low and steady. The dress we found in the pipe, does it belong to someone you know? Emily's breath hitched, her lower lip quivering. She squeezed her eyes shut, as if trying to push away a terrible memory. Then, finally, she nodded. My sister. The words came out barely above a whisper, but they struck like thunder. Mark's vision blurred at the edges. This wasn't just about a stray dog finding shelter in a drain pipe. This was something far worse. Bennett's expression darkened. Emily, where is your sister now? Tears slipped down her cheeks as she finally whispered the words that made Mark's heart drop like a stone. I don't know. The air around them thickened with tension. The girl's confession had altered everything. This was no longer just a mystery, it was a race against time. Somewhere out there, Emily's sister was either lost, in danger, or worse. Detective Bennett straightened, his voice measured but urgent. Emily, when was the last time you saw your sister? Emily wiped at her tear-streaked cheeks, her small body trembling. A few nights ago, before I ran away. Mark exchanged a glance with Bennett. Ran away from where? Emily's breath hitched. From him. A cold chill ran through Mark's spine. He didn't have to ask who him was. Bennett crouched to meet Emily's gaze. Emily, this is important. Was your sister with you when you ran? She shook her head. She told me to go first. Said she'd come after. But she never did. The officers were silent for a beat, absorbing the weight of what the child had just revealed. Then, the mother dog stirred. She let out a quiet whimper and nuzzled one of her pups before stepping forward, ears alert, nose twitching. She wasn't growling anymore. Instead, she seemed to be waiting. Mark's pulse quickened. What if she's been trying to tell us something this whole time? Bennett followed his gaze to the dog. You think she knows where Emily's sister is? Mark nodded slowly. She led us to the dress. What if there's more? The officers exchanged glances. Then, without another word, Mark stepped back and gestured toward the open field. The dog hesitated only briefly before bolting forward. She moved with purpose. The officers followed, moving cautiously but swiftly as the dog led them past the drain pipe and toward a section of the construction site that had been long abandoned. Rusted scaffolding and debris cluttered the ground, remnants of a project that had been forgotten. Then, she stopped. The mother dog stood in front of a collapsed wooden pallet, her body tense, ears perked. She whined softly, pawing at the dirt. Mark's stomach nodded. There's something here. Bennett stepped forward, motioning for the others to help. Together, they lifted the pallet and froze. Beneath it was a narrow opening, a crude hole dug into the earth. Ramirez grabbed his flashlight, angling the beam downward. The light cut through the darkness and illuminated something that made everyone's blood run cold. A small, pale hand. Mark's breath caught in his throat. Call it in. Bennett barked, already dropping to his knees. Now. Ramirez fumbled for his radio as Mark and Hale dug into the loose dirt with their bare hand. They worked frantically, adrenaline fueling their every motion. Then, a gasp. The hand twitched. She's alive! Mark shouted. Within seconds, they had cleared enough space to reveal the girl, a fragile, dirt-covered figure curled into herself. She coughed, her breath ragged, but her eyes fluttered open. Emily sobbed. Lily! The girl's gaze lifted, unfocused at first, until she saw her sister. And then, Emily! Mark's throat tightened as Emily ushed forward, throwing herself onto her sister in a trembling embrace. Bennett let out a slow exhale. She needs medical attention. Sirens wailed in the distance. The backup team was arriving. Mark glanced at the mother dog, who sat quietly, watching over the girls with a knowing look. She had been their guardian all along. And in that moment, Mark knew. She had saved both their lives.